There's a song I remember Dad singing. I don't know. It was from A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. It was a musical called A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And this father sings, "I'll buy you a star, not just any star. Very loving. And our family is very loving. And I think the music that runs through me is very much a reflection of the family I grew up in and the role that music played in our lives.
We grew up with parents who really appreciated each other. So we grew up surrounded by a lot of love. They met on a blind date the night before Pearl Harbor Day, 1941.
When she first saw him at the top of the stairs, there's no way I'm going out with him. I mean, he had, he looked like he was 10 years old. He had skipped 3 grades as a kid, and he went through college in 3 years. I mean, he was barely in his 20s. But my grandmother said, once. You have to go out with him once.
Then they get to the fraternity house, and they walk in, and everyone's going, "Hey, Normie! Normie's here! Normie's here! Get to the piano!" And Dad sat at the piano and started playing. Yeah, Dad's all over this book. What is it? My Funny Valentine, Sweet Comic Valentine.
They both grew up in New York City. My father lived in the Bronx, then they moved to Brooklyn, they moved to Queens. The story in my mother's house is that every time the oven got dirty, they moved.
She was the second of 4 children, very artistic. She actually took acting classes with Sanford Meisner. She was in the same acting class, as I remember, with Eli Wallach and Ann Jackson. And when she met my father, she continued to act and write, but within the context of being a homemaker and a mother.
My father and mother never sat down at a meal together without toasting each other. It could be breakfast at McDonald's and they toasted each other.
She said it was like they found their missing pieces, like they just belonged together.
You know, you spend years dreading what the end of life will be. Most Mom and Dad were becoming increasingly, practically bedridden, but I remember the day when we first discussed hospice. My Dad was in the hospital. We realized this was very likely a cancer and spreading. So we said, "Look, Dad, we should get hospice care." I thought of contacting Calvary as just, frankly, taking advantage of the fact that we could have some real help dealing with somebody who's ill and in pain. Fact is, Calvary is there for that part of life.
My mother really had been chronically sick for years. She had chronic COPD. They determined with her breathing issues that she was a candidate for hospice.
They were both literally in hospice together, in home hospice together, which was, I don't know how common that is, but.
Calvary brought in 2 hospital beds into my parents' home. And when Chris would come, that was their Calvary nurse, she was just delighted to see them and let them know she was delighted to see them.
Calvary is there for you 24/7. You don't have to worry anymore. You're being supported. Chris dealt with our doctor directly. All the decisions were off of me.
My father was in his own home, surrounded by people who loved him.
The last day that he was conscious, he thanked me and my husband for allowing us to be at home through his illness and to die at home. And it was such a moment, and the 2 of us sang together. He and I had a song that he sang to me as a baby, and I walked down to the aisle to, and we danced our father-daughter dance to, and he started to sing with me in this weakened voice. I'll never forget that.
Mom, at the very end, just couldn't seem to pass at home. And it was becoming so difficult. So we brought her to the Calvary facility, and she died within a couple of days. God bless Calvary, honestly. The people, the nurses, the aides, universally compassionate, patient, very human.
Singing with Dad around the piano and Mom watching and failing was... I was at the bedside of my father when he passed at home, and my mother when she passed at the Calvary Hospital. And if it weren't for Calvary, for what they did for my parents, I would not have had those 2 experiences. It was a blessing. They weren't hooked up to anything. It was peaceful and it was calm, and I bless Calvary more than I can say for that.
Each day is